Joining us once again, we're always delighted to have her, is Becky Bond, political director for Credo. A little while back, a few days ago, Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to the head of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Senator Warren is not happy. Now, Credo Action has stepped in with a petition. Tell President Obama, time for Mary Jo White, who is the director of the SEC, time for Mary Jo White to go. Becky, first of all, thanks for joining us, as always.
Oh, it's great to be on the program.
And secondly, why is it time for Mary Jo White to go, and what was it that we have learned both from Senator Warren and recent events about Mary Jo that brings us to this pass?
Well, I think I think a lot of Americans who follow what's going on with Wall Street ever since the financial crash is we've seen again and again that when bankers break the law, there are no consequences. And, it does take a while sometimes for these government regulatory institutions to do their job, and we understand that those processes take time. But what we're finding with the Securities Exchange Commission, which Mary Jo White is the chair of, and which is the federal agency responsible for enforcing securities laws and regulating Wall Street, that we've given them time to push through regulations, and they're simply not doing their job. And so then when you look at it, like, why aren't regulations coming out when they've been ordered to write regulations on CEO pay and other things? And it comes back to the chair that was appointed by President Obama, who seems to be at the heart of this dysfunction. And we only have a little bit of time left before we have the next president of the United States, and whether that's Democrat Hillary Clinton or one of the clown show Republicans that we see out there, we can only guess that regulation may get worse under the next president of the United States. So we need to take action now to rein in these big banks. And if Mary Jo White's not going to do her job, then she needs to go.
Well, that seems reasonable when you put it that way. I remember when Mary Jo White was appointed, there were some people who were optimistic because she had been a prosecutor. She had a reputation for being fairly aggressive against Wall Street institutions. But she had also, since she had been a prosecutor, worked for some of the white shoe law firms that defend and work for Wall Street's biggest malefactors, its biggest banks. And I guess it seems to me that side of her experience has come out, which points us to something else that is related. I want to get back to the Mary Jo White issue specifically, but isn't this another symptom of the revolving door, whether it's with the SEC, the Justice Department, or some of the other institutions charged with protecting us from misbehavior on Wall Street?
Yes, it's what happens is you have Mary Jo White, and yes, she was a federal prosecutor, but even as a federal prosecutor in New York, she didn't, go after the banks with any kind of zeal. And then she took her experience as a prosecutor, went to one of these corporate law firms where she defended white-collar criminals. So what this means is the head of the agency that's supposed to be enforcing laws on bankers is someone who previously made a lot of money defending bankers, and after she leaves the SEC, that's probably what she'll go back to. And it's not even a question of whether she is going to do the right thing in her job, but that because she has so many relationships with Wall Street banks, that she actually has to recuse herself from a lot of really important votes. And that means you have only 2 Republican commissioners and 2 Democratic commissioners that can actually weigh in. So because of her ethics conflicts issues, she's not even able to cast the deciding vote in a series of matters. And it's not just Mary Jo White. It gets worse. Her husband currently works for one of these law firms on Wall Street, and so she can't weigh in on cases where his firm has represented the people that are before the SEC for punishment. Now, this is making her inefficient because she can't work, but oddly enough, in some cases, she actually applies for a waiver from ethics rules so that she can weigh in, and that's happened with some of her when some of her former big clients have been up in serious matters, and the American public, they don't even necessarily tell us until it could be a year later that we could find that Mary Jo White is weighing in on criminal activity by banks, and the bank that's in question is someone that she had a previous relationship with her firm representing it. So it's a really It's a really convoluted situation. It's why a lot of our institutions run by the federal government seem to serve the corporations better than they do the American people. But Mary Jo White, when she was in her confirmation hearing, she said it was going to be her job to represent the American people, and we haven't seen her do that time and again. And she's conflicted out on important matters. The SEC is repeatedly giving banks who've been charged with who've been convicted of crimes, giving them waivers so that they can avoid the automatic penalties that go with it. And we only have a little bit of time left until the next president comes in and appoints a new head of the SEC, and we need this president to put someone in charge of the SEC who's actually going to hold banks accountable, impose, not waive the automatic penalties that come when banks finally get convicted of criminal charges. We need someone who is going to do their job, and that's not Mary Jo White.
We're talking with Becky Bond, political director of Credo, and we saw that just recently, Becky. We saw in the latest mega bank fraud settlement, which was with 5 banks regarding manipulation of foreign currencies, misrepresenting the facts of their own clients, and so on. We saw that these banks were admitting to criminal fraudulent wrongdoing. And of course, on the Justice Department side of the scale, they never seem to pursue any individuals behind these criminal frauds, even though it is a human as well as a civil crime. So, but we saw 5 banks admitting to these criminal fraud charges, but the settlement was actually delayed, according to the reports I read, until the SEC was willing to come through with the waivers. This is my understanding. Was willing to come through with the waivers, which nobody doubted it would do, so that those banks, because there are rules that say if an institution is convicted of criminal fraud, it loses certain privileges, the ability to do certain things, can't trade stocks the way it used to, and requires more oversight and so on. But that they actually held this deal up with the Justice Department until the SEC confirmed that it would be compliant and there would be no actual penalty of any kind, even financial, beyond the fraud settlement itself. So isn't that part of what we're dealing with here? A kind of nexus of people who are in justice and SEC who are just accustomed to this is the way you handle it now?
Well, not everybody. So that's I mean what you're describing is how the SEC works today. So if you actually get a criminal conviction of a bank for breaking the law, there are automatic penalties that are triggered. It's harder for them to raise money without getting special permission from the SEC. They can't just issue securities, right? They can't trade certain securities. It makes it, there's actually a penalty, right, for breaking the law. And what happens time and time again is the SEC votes to waive those automatic penalties. So it's just as if like you or I were convicted of a felony, right? But then they're like, okay, well you have a felony, but nothing's going to happen. You don't have to go to jail. I mean, think about it now, right? People who, if you're a person who gets convicted of a crime, of a felony, right? Even after you serve your time in many states, you can't vote. Right? And in many places, it means you can't get a job because you can be asked about this on your job application, right? And people, this ruins lives, and people have to live with the consequences of this, for the rest of their lives if an individual is convicted of a crime. But if you're a bank and you're convicted of a crime, your bank and you plead guilty to a criminal and you get a criminal conviction, the SEC just has a vote and they say, oh, all the stuff that goes along with that is not going to apply to you. So if there's no penalty, what's the problem? Why would they stop breaking the law if that's how they make money? But there is one commissioner, Kara Stein, who consistently votes against issuing these waivers. And if we simply put commissioners on the SEC who would do their job like Kara Stein, then we could actually make these banks feel some real pain when they broke the law, and they would break the law less. It's just common sense.
So we have our new head of the SEC, our ideal Kara Stein. Also, I think it's important for people to remember that in the history of the SEC, it has been an aggressive organization. Going back to FDR and the creation of the SEC. FDR, as you know, Becky, named Joseph Kennedy, who had been a rather notorious Wall Street character himself, to run the SEC. I think on the principle of it takes one to know one. And Joe Kennedy was very aggressive as head of the SEC. He did a great job, so it can be and has been at various times in history a very effective organization. So I guess then in terms of getting Mary Jo White out of there and getting somebody in to get the job done, what can people do? Where can they go? And then I have another quick question to ask you, but where can they go to make their voices heard on this topic?
Well, there's a couple ways you can weigh in. You can go to credoaction.com and you can sign our petition to President Obama, letting him know that it's time for Mary Jo White to go, that he can immediately replace her as chair, making another one of the commissioners chair of the SEC and have her step down. The other thing you can do is, interestingly right now, Credo, one of the groups that Credo members are supporting this month is the Project on Government Oversight, also known as POGO. It's one of our best government watchdogs. POGO has called on the president to get rid of Mary Jo White, and if you are a Credo member, you can actually go to credodonations.com and you can vote to raise money this month for POGO and the excellent work that they're doing, blowing the whistle on Kara Stein and other corruption at the SEC.
At Mary Jo White, you mean? And
Mary Jo White, exactly. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
and support of commissioners like Kara Stein. I mean, and you know this, but in Washington D.C., personnel is policy in many cases, and the SEC could do its job if we had the right people in place, and that's what we need to do. That's how we get change quickly.
You know, and a final thought on this before I ask you another quick question, which is, part of the corruption is the corruption of knowing that there's going to be a nice job waiting for you when you leave your government post. Part of the but I think part of it is the social corruption. By that, I just mean, the big bankers. You go to cocktail parties with them. You have lunch with them. You can't really see yourself punishing, even financially, a Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan Chase or whoever. And as a result, this goes on and on and on. And you have this spectacle of Jamie Dimon this week lecturing. I don't know if you saw this, Becky, lecturing Senator Elizabeth Warren on, I don't think you know how global finance really works, and why don't you stop by the office and I will school you. One might even say mansplaining.
Mansplaining. We posted that to the Credo Mobile Facebook page, probably the only telephone company to do that, which is like, it's insulting that the head of J.P. Morgan Bank is mansplaining to a professor of bankruptcy law and U.S. Senator on this issue. It's unbelievable.
And trust me, I will also have more to say about that. But I'm tempted to start now, but I won't. Listen, one other quick question for you. Becky Baum, political director of Credo. I know you guys have been doing terrific work trying to stop this terrible trade deal that's coming down the tracks. We're going to be covering it more in a couple other segments here, but the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, and the so-called Fast Track, the Trade Promotion Authority. Now, I've heard word that, you've been encouraging people to call in. Just in a minute or so, I've heard that people are having trouble calling into Congress on this issue.
Yeah, when you get these, like, we send emails to our folks in key moments and fights and ask them to call in and weigh in, and it's not just something we ask other people to do. Telephone calls, I've been told by senators in person that telephone calls make the biggest difference, and so not only do we ask our members to make calls, but we also get on the phone and call our members of Congress. And right now we are drilling House Leader Nancy Pelosi's office with telephone calls from mad as hell progressives who want her to block the TPP by stopping the Republicans in the White House from getting the votes that they want to pass Fast Track Trade Authority, which I know that you've talked a lot about on your show. And so Murshid Zahid, who's leading the campaign for Credo, called in and to Leader Pelosi's office. He's a constituent of Nancy Pelosi living in San Francisco, and called in because we think there's going to be a vote tomorrow, and she's the one that will either rally the handful of Democrats, not to collude with the White House and Republicans, or will get the votes for the White House. And he called in, and he was, basically the person that answered the phone wouldn't even talk to him and just shifted him to voicemail and wouldn't take his comment. And so he took a look at, starting this morning, we've been asking Credo members to call, and over 2,700 of them have already placed phone calls in to Leader Pelosi and Steny Hoyer. And so he starts looking at the notes that people write us about their calls when they make their call, and he saw again and again that constituents and other progressives who've been calling the leader's office, they've been the people answering the phones have been refusing to talk to them, and as soon as they start talking about Fast Track or TPP, they just switch them directly into a voicemail account. And so we're very concerned that the voices of corporations and lobbyists and foreign governments are drowning out the voices of Americans who are trying to weigh in at a critical moment in this fight. Literally, we'd have people writing in saying things like, quote, a staff member answered the phone and cut me off in the middle of the word to switch me to voicemail.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not a way for a progressive to act. It's not a way for a Democrat to act. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. But I don't know about you, Becky. I think that Democrats are going to have to answer for their silence on this issue, because silence is assenting to this terrible deal, or saying, as Nancy Pelosi did, they're trying to get a path to yes. We need a path to no, in my opinion. And that's what I expect people to be doing on our behalf. And I love the work you're doing in this and so many areas. So Becky Baum, Political Director for Credo, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
We will be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.